name is Rob Acton. I've recently, in the last 2 years, become a game publisher. I've designed games for the last 7 or 8 years. By day, I am an advocate, so I do litigation. But the new venture is publishing, and publishing particularly board and card games that I've designed. Well, that's a good question. I mean, I suppose like everybody, it's like from playing games. So my history is role-playing games. Grew up playing role-playing games, and as a kid playing, the old classic board games. And I've just always had a passion for not just playing games, but changing them, altering them, and making my own. Ambition is the first of my designs that I decided to publish. It's also the smallest. And the idea was that I wanted to get a proper dive into the idea of publishing. I didn't want to just be on the edge, trying to convince publishers to publish my game. I wanted to be more proactive. I wanted to publish games initially in South Africa as much as possible, and hopefully try and engineer some form of growth of that industry. Somebody once told me that we can't just be gamers. Our community is too small. We need to all be advocates for our environment, and I think that's part of what is behind it. I want to advocate games, and I want to do it in a way that empowers me and empowers people close to me. So self-publishing was an idea to self-publish a small game, so that didn't require as much capital as you would for a large-scale production, and didn't have as much risk as it would for a large-scale production. So taking the design that I was comfortable with and then starting the publication process, which is essentially self-taught and relying on what I've seen from other people in the industry, and then trying to make as few errors as possible. But that's unavoidable in any industry, because essentially, you're learning a new business, and that is always hard. And you need to be open-minded, and you need to be prepared to make errors and ask people who know what they're doing. And I think so. The process the learning process has been probably one of the most rewarding that I've had. Effectively, trying to upskill. It's set in this kind of dark fantasy realm, in which
it's actually beautiful.
Thanks. In terms of which is based largely on game worlds that I played in and designed back in the role-playing days. But essentially, in this iteration of that world, these characters have come out of effectively enslavement by insect oppressors. This is the brave new world, and rather than learn from the mistakes of the past, they've immediately resolved to trying to grab power from each other. And that's essentially what you're doing in this game, trying to be the first person to achieve power, which is measured by these tokens. And you do that by playing cards. There's 16 individual characters, all of them have powers, but it's not just a card game. The cards facilitate what is ultimately a mind game, in my view. It's a game in which we are trying to get into each other's heads, to work out what we're playing, to stop each other playing what we think they're going to, and then to get our own cards to go off. And it's bluffing, manipulation, and it's a very fun, very competitive, and quite intense card game. Started the publication journey in 2018. So this game probably had a design time of about a year and a half, which most of which is spent in play testing. Putting the game in front of people, and then sitting there biting your nails, waiting for feedback. One of the earliest mistakes is relying only on a close-knit group of friends to determine whether my games were good or not. Because, as I mentioned earlier, what you really need if you're going to publish games is an objective, market-based idea of how good your game is. Your game's always going to be good for the people that you already game with, because you all think the same anyway, and that's why you game together. You have similar views, similar tastes. So that's the first mistake. The second mistake was thinking that I could do the design work completely using free software. and which I've used for many years, but there's certain graphics conventions and graphical tricks that a printer needs, which unfortunately are most easily got by purchased software. And I think if you're going to take on the publication journey, you want to invest in a decent graphics package. Photoshop, I think, is an essential if you're going to do this. One of the biggest mistakes is a fundamental one, and that is the delusional one. Is wanting your game to be good and confusing that with knowing that your game is good. And I think a lot of people go quite far in the process without having got the basics right. In other words, they don't really have, unfortunately, a publishable game, and that creates heartache along the way. And I think it's the first step. You need to be sure that people are going to like your game, and that's not easy. So that's a common error, I think. The best advice would be play test broadly and blind play test as early as possible. And by blind play test, I mean you're not there to talk people through your game. You know, we all game designers, we tend to dungeon master a bit when we're showing people our game, and we need to get out of that mindset, because your game has to stand on its own, and more particularly your rule book needs to be able to stand on its own in order to teach the game. And yes, we can do YouTube videos and we can assist that, but your average buyer needs to know how to play the game by reading that rule book. So play test and blind play test. Find a group of people that you don't know, who don't know you, give them your rule book, and come back 2 hours later and ask them how the game went. I think that's critical in the design process. In the publication process, I think the advice would be ask people as much as possible who know the business already, because there's so many tricks and tips and conventions and standards in that industry already that people who are in the industry understand that you need to learn that lexicon before you can really operate in that. So it's about research. It's about best advice would be find somebody that's in the printing industry and ask them to teach you, what do you need? At what stage do you need the product in order to print it? Because I think what a lot of publishers or people who design games think is we can give the printer a whole lot of items and they will print it and they will put it all together and give it some form, but they don't. Printers are only going to print what you publish. So you have to have all your layouts done, all your bleed, which is the area around your artwork. Everything has to be ready for printing, and the printers know what that format is, so ask them. They'll tell you. They'll be quite happy to take you through. I've had a very good experience with printers who are prepared to put up with my own lack of knowledge and have talked me through the process. And there are great people in the industry who are prepared to do it, so I use it. Reviews they've been excellent. Thank goodness.
People playing it?
Yeah,
How did
no.
they appreciate?
Yeah, they. I mean, it's come down very well at this event. You know, and that's the thing. You've also got to have the confidence to put it out there. For example, it's listed on Board Game Geek, and in Board Game Geek, you know, lots of people are going to go, and you're going to get reviews. I think we have a single review of 2 out of 10. And I think that the comment that went with it was the only good about this game is only fun about this game is laughing at it. But that's, thank goodness, an outlier, and you're always going to get those people, you know. So generally speaking, it's been very good. I think the average rating is above 7.4, which puts the game right up there with some of the top games. So we're very happy with where it's rated at the moment. It's available locally on Take-A-Lot, and we're broadening the retailer base all the time, but it's available in most retailers in SA at the moment. Well, there's an expansion already built for this, which we're play testing at the moment. So this is 16 cards. The expansion would put another 16, which would hugely change the gameplay, increase the player count. But that's on the back burner until, you know, we've sold the requisite number of these. But I have another board game, a massive, very intense, large-scale game called The City, which is in sort of final play testing at the moment. And that is probably the project that's keeping me the most busy. That's a good question. If I think about it, I think a lot of it, because all of us that have been in the role-playing space, we know that these games are not hard-coded. Every role-playing game, no matter how intensely it wants you to adhere to rules, always encourages this kind of the spirit of tinkering. Everybody's kit bashing who's done role-playing games, and the idea of making and changing games is not new to anybody who's played a character or who's run a game in whatever format. So I think it's had a big effect in terms of creating in me that mindset which wants to change and build and modify. And I think that's, from playing role-playing games as a teenager, I think that is now that you ask me, I think that's an excellent reason why. So it's had a big role, I think. I think it's had a bigger role than I realized. It's far less rigid than formal game design, but the process and what you're going through and what you're trying to do is exactly what you're doing when you're designing a game. I mean, you're engineering fun, and that's exactly what game design is. We're trying to engineer fun, and that's not easy to do sometimes. We've been pretty swamped demoing for 3 days now, but so I've tried to get a look around it, but I haven't really. I'm a little concerned about the fact that there's literally not much in the way of board and card games at the convention. But I understand that has a lot to do with the fact that there was a lot of that at Comic-Con, and the two events are very close together. Look, it hasn't been that negative for us, the fact that we're the only tabletop game that's going on.
You're pretty niche right now.
Exactly. And one of the things that the designer and the organizer set up is a quest, which involves people coming to look for tabletop games. And seeing as we seem to be the only one being played, we've got a lot of people come to view the game, to play the game, and ultimately buy it. So it's been good. Weird role-playing games. When I say weird, I mean you're not weird. Your one-shots, your story-based games. So my own role-playing tastes are very much, I like the game to be a game. There must be some kind of dice, there must be some kind of resolution mechanism. But I, every now and then, like to go to the fringe in terms of story-driven games, which feel more like amateur dramatics. So that's probably my most fringe. Like the people that I game with wouldn't follow me on that route, most of them. But I really like these kind of indie RPGs that are coming out all the time.
So thanks a lot for joining me.
No, thanks, man. Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers, man.